Good evening. Let us discuss 18th May 2015 articles today. Now, the first thing is Mongolia and India relations. It is important in the context of Prime Minister Modi's visit to Mongolia. If you see, the relations with Mongolia started in 1955, and an Indo-Mongol communique it has led to the foundation of this, and it is the 60 years of establishments of relationship with Mongolia. And second thing is, it is the 25th anniversary of transformation of Mongolia into a democracy. So Prime Minister Modi visit signifies these two important events. Now let us understand the evolution of the relations between these two countries. In 1972, Mongolia has sponsored UN resolution with India and Bhutan for the recognition of newly created Bangladesh. Why it did so, again, is the wish of China. If you can remember that, in 1961, India supported the Mongolia in admission for various international forums. China, Taiwan, everyone opposed to this, that is, induction of Mongolia into United Nations. Now the bilateral cooperation, if you see that, the Treaty of Friendly Relations and Cooperation was signed between two countries in 1994 during the President of Mongolia at that point of time, Ochirbat's visit to India. Mr. Ochirbat, he has visited India in 1994, then we formalized this agreement. And the second thing is, there is a defense cooperation agreement between these two countries. They also conducted certain defense exercises in the name of Operation Elephant. So we also conducted certain defense exercises. They are called Operation Nomadic Elephant. And the next thing is, India is largely supporting the Mongolia in modernization of its weaponry. And Mongolia is one of the countries with which India signed a civil nuclear cooperation agreement after France and Russia. In this context, let us also see the geographical location of Mongolia. It is landlocked country between Russia on one side, China on all the three sides. China not only geographically encompasses Mongolia, it also economically and politically does the same. Almost 70% of the exports of Mongolia are to China, and 60% of investments for Mongolia comes from China. And second thing is, Mongolians do not enjoy respect with China. Chinese even today, they call the Mongolians as little Mongols and outer Mongolia, or it means outer Mongolia. They see that in the Mao's five-finger policy, etc., Mongolia is one country. And next is, the Taiwans do not officially recognize it as a sovereign nation even today. So in this context, excessive engagement with China and dependence on China, it has been it is leading to very insecurity in Mongolia. In this context, India is leading to an increased engagement with Mongolia in spite of China is trying to assert its regional strength. So Mongolia is also interested in third neighbor policy. So in this third neighbor policy, it means it is looking beyond Russia and China and trying to develop its foreign relations with the countries outside it. So in this context, India becomes very much important. As China, one way of looking at it is this. As China is entering into the sphere of influence of India, India is also entering into the sphere of influence of China. And one more thing is, we have cultural connections. The Buddhism is a strong cultural connection. And second thing is, there is a huge mineral wealth that is existing in Mongolia, especially the uranium reserves. So, though we signed a civil nuclear cooperation agreement with Mongolia, the trade is never comprehensive or never even initiated. So uranium trade is one thing which we are strongly looking at. So the engagement of India with Mongolia may lead to the establishing of a power balance in the region vis-a-vis relations with China. That is one thing the strategists talk about. So this is about Prime Minister Modi's visit to Mongolia and its significance. So, and added to that, if you understand, some people call it as a master stroke by Modi towards China, whatever be the case. And next is South Korea. Now, after Mongolia, Prime Minister Modi is moving to South Korea as a third leg in his foreign trip. In this case, what we can learn from South Korea? What are the irritants in this relationship? Let us try to see. Now, the South Korea and India have a very deep economic engagement, and also they have deep cultural engagements. Both these countries are connected by Buddhism and also by the Princess of Ayodhya. She married to King Kim Suro in Korea. And on the disadvantageous part, both the countries are also having a neighbor who is irritating with their nuclear weapons. For South Korea, it is North Korea. For India, it is Pakistan. It's a previously brothers. Now they are fighting with each other. Now, if you see the history, initially under the influence of non-alignment, post-Korean War, India has followed a policy of equidistance. In 1980, India moved away from this equidistance policy and developed its stronger relations with South Korea through its Look East policy. After this, the Korean investments have increased to India. Now almost $3 billion worth of Korean investments exist in India. In return to it, Indian investments exist to a tune of $1 billion in Korea. The bilateral trade also touched $20 billion. But however, this trade is not favorable to India. So a trade deficit unfavorable to India exists with Seoul. Now, the irritants are, one is the trade deficit, the second is, if you can remember the POSCO steel plant, almost, it has come up in 2010, if I am not wrong. In spite of this, it is 2005. In spite of this, it has been considered as the largest foreign direct investment into India. Still, it is pending because of the land and mineral acquisition. So in this context, what are the areas of the cooperation that can exist between India and China? The first is skill development. The entire success of South Korea converting itself into one of the tiger economy, it is related to the skill development or focus on skill development. Now in South Korea, research institutions, university, and industry interlinkage is very strong, and more than 70% of the university research it is financed by the industry. Industry financed research, industry centric skill development, these are the two major reasons for the success of the South Korea as a manufacturing hub. So India can learn the skill development techniques from the South Korea. And next is, with regard to infrastructure cooperation, also South Korea is very strong. I think already South Korea is trying to give some $20 billion or $10 billion towards infrastructure. On economic engagement, India and South Korea already have this comprehensive economic partnership agreement. And with regard to shipbuilding, the industry South Korea is very strong. And also nuclear energy, the South Korea is very strong. So it can also build the nuclear reactors at 20 to 30% less than many of the Western countries. On the other hand, India can help South Korea through space technology launching of its satellites. And one more forgotten area between India and South Korea is e-visas, that is promotion of tourism. In this context, the India is shifting itself from look east policy to act east policy. What is the difference between these two? The External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj has clearly said, act east policy is more a proactive policy. Previously, under the look east policy, the failed engagement of India because of its bureaucratic bottlenecks is occupied by China in its engagement with ASEAN. But however, China do not enjoy a trust with the ASEAN countries and they believe or they see Indian growth as benign to them. So they actively support India in its growth in spite of this lack of proper engagement structures and bureaucratic bottlenecks did not help us to realize the full potential of ASEAN. And though we signed the free trade agreement, we did not get the benefits from it. So now the Act East policy is going to rectify these particular mistakes and it is going to engage them properly with the Southeast Asian countries. And the next is corruption. There is another article over here. So in this article, what it is been said is there is an agency that is called Global Financial Integrity. So it found out certain remarkable evidences about the corruption in India. The report states that the illicit financial flows from India, with regard to the illicit financial flows, it means unaccounted money flow from India. In various rankings out of 142 countries, India stands 5th. In 2011, close to $1 lakh million, that is almost $95,000 million of equivalent funds flew from India through illicit routes, unaccounted money. And next is, India is also one among the top 5 exporters of illicit capital. And what is the major reason for this? Indian traders, they try to bring under invoices for the goods which they purchase in the foreign countries and they pay the money to them through informal routes such as hawala. So for example, if I want to buy a good from China, so what I say that in the cost is $10, I ask him to bill for $2 and the remaining $8 I will send through hawala. So when the good enters the Indian customs, then the customs duty on my goods is going to come down. In this way, the custom duties are evaded. So this is how one is breeding for the corruption. And the next article is about the media, and especially the criticism of the media is increasing these days. So what this article says is, based on Media Watch India and NGO, so electronic media monitoring cell of Ministry of Information Broadcasting report itself says that most of the cases, 37% of the cases, the violations in the electronic media are related to vulgarity and obscenity. And also TV channels are flouting many rules. And when they are being questioned, that is media freedom, they are going to guard themselves under the cover of media freedom. So in this context, it brings back the regulation of media, the issue of regulation of media in India. It has to be a self-regulation or it has to be something called independent regulation. Already I discussed to you about Levenson Committee report in UK. So it suggests for an independent regulation of media. I want to say you one thing. This either a Gopi Chanda, he is a person I personally know, a Gandhian. And his son, he is into IRS, Indian Revenue Service now. Right, he prepared along with me. Next is Shiv Vishwanathan. I don't know why he writes the articles and it is too complex and useless for the examination. He wants to show up his knowledge in English rather than convey the meaning to the reader. Now in this process, commodification of violence, what he says is, violence is as a value of consumerism, or it's a product of consumerism in India. It means the violence sells in India. And this violence takes different shapes as a commodity. What he says is spectatorship, and what he says is objectification in the form of numbers, and sometimes participation. If a thief, you also participate in the act of violence to show something called as to support that particular individual who is a victim of that particular theft. It means there are different forms. We are consuming the violence as a part of our daily life. And this consumerism of violence is much dangerous. But however, India can go pass on through, that's what he wanted to say. But I'll say it's a big useless article. And next is, up in the air. This particular discussion fits in accountability versus autonomy. Now, in the good governance paradigm, we discussed about exit and voice and choice. It means a citizen shall be treated as a consumer, and the service provider has to value the citizen's choice. So in this case, if there are multiple channels which have come up in India, so the citizen has option or choice so that he can move from one channel to the other channel. He can exit the poor service channels, and he can raise questions about the quality of the channel. In this case, if BBC is a typical example where a state media can run profitably with focusing on quality. What made the BBC to run like that? Though BBC is a state channel or it is still in the public sector. Understand that most of the revenues of the BBC, they are reportedly come from the licensing fee. Every TV owner pays in UK. And out of this money, 70% is spent on the quality of programs. On the other hand, Prasara Bharati, 30%, less than 30 is spent on the quality of programs. Most of the funds comes from government. So when the money it is receiving as a part of subsidy from the government, then automatically accountability is bound to decrease. When you are dependent on the consumer for your existence, then your quality of the output of the service will improve. As Prasara Bharati is more and more dependent on the government and its agencies for its existence depends upon its loyalty to the political masters. That's why it is becoming an easy instrument of political maneuvering and a mouthpiece of the party which is in power to spread its accomplishments. So in this case, in the accountability versus autonomy argument, what we can say is, in a neoliberal era, so a service which can serve the customer needs will have a long-term existence. No more free lunches. If you deliver, you will exist. If not, you are being thrown out. The Prasara Bharati is not going to be different from this. And finally, an article on the closing article on China, on the Prime Minister Modi's visit to China. What it said is, the entire India-China relations now are dominated by the economic dimension. Mr. Xi, when he visited India in September 2014, he stressed on closer developmental partnership, and it is taken to the next level by Modi's visit. In this, the total 26 agreements are signed, and the $22 billion worth of them are related to the commercial investments. On the climate change, both the countries have made their point, that is equity, common but differentiated responsibilities is what their stand is going to be. On One Belt, One Belt, One Road initiative, India did not commit anything. It has got its own doubts about it. But it showed its positive inclination towards Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar corridor. So it is dealing One Belt, One Road initiative of China on a project-to-project basis. Now, if we can say India and China relations totally at a macro level are filled with complexities of hope and optimism on one side and caution and mistrust on the other side. So peaceful borders, engagement of the leaders at the highest level will realize or will make us realize a future of Asia. So this is what is the conclusion can be. Thank you very much.